Widely hailed as one of the founding fathers of rock and roll and rockabilly, Jerry Lee Lewis earned the nickname The Killer for his explosive performances. But while the stage made him a legend, his private life told a very different story. 7 marriages, 6 children, shocking scandals, and heartbreaking tragedies. His family life was as chaotic as his music was electrifying. From the devastating loss of children at a young age to the emergence of a daughter whose existence he once denied, the saga of Jerry Lee Lewis and his children is filled with drama, secrets, and sorrow. In this video, we'll dive into those untold stories, but before we begin, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. Number 6. Jerry Lee Lewis Jr. Jerry Lee Lewis Jr. was the firstborn son of rock and roll pioneer Jerry Lee Lewis and his first wife, Dorothy Barton. Born in 1954, he grew up in the shadow of his father's fame during the height of the rock and roll revolution. While Jerry Lee Lewis Sr. was electrifying audiences with hits like Great Balls of Fire and Whole Lotta Shakin' Going On, young Jerry Jr. preferred a private life. Unlike his father, he did not pursue a career in music or step into the public spotlight, and much of his early life remains out of record. Tragedy struck the Lewis family in 1973 when Jerry Lee Lewis Jr. was killed in a car accident near Hernando, Mississippi at the age of 19. His untimely death was a devastating blow to the family and to Jerry Lee Lewis himself, who was already suffering from earlier heartbreaks. The death of Jerry Jr. was especially painful because it came during a turbulent period in Jerry Lee Lewis's career. His music had been overshadowed in the 1960s by the scandal surrounding his marriage to his 13-year-old cousin, Myra Gale Brown. Though he later revived his career in country music, he continued to struggle with personal tragedies, substance abuse, and financial troubles. Losing his eldest son weighed heavily on him. Although Jerry Jr. did not live long enough to establish a career or leave behind widely known achievements, his short life and tragic death are often included in the broader narrative of Jerry Lee Lewis's turbulent family history. Number 5. Ronnie Guy Lewis. Ronnie Guy Lewis is the second son of Jerry Lee Lewis and his second wife, Jane Mitchum. He was born in 1956 and grew up during the peak of his father's fame. Like some of his siblings, Ronnie has kept a relatively low profile throughout his life. He did not pursue a career in music or the entertainment industry, which allowed him to avoid much of the controversy and spotlight that surrounded his father. This stability, in many ways, can be seen as an achievement of its own. Choosing to remain out of the public eye did not mean that Ronnie had a troubled relationship with his father. In fact, there are no widely reported conflicts between them. Despite his quiet lifestyle, Ronnie is still recognized as part of the Lewis family legacy. Given his father's many controversies, Ronnie seems to have maintained a more private and steady bond with him. Number 4. Steve Allen Lewis. Steve Allen Lewis was the third child of Jerry Lee Lewis and his second wife, Jane Mitchum. He was born in 1959 and tragically passed away just 3 years later in 1962 after drowning in the family's swimming pool. His death was a devastating blow to Jerry Lee Lewis, who was already enduring turbulence in both his personal and professional life. The tragedy came not long after his career had suffered a severe hit due to the scandal over his marriage to his 13-year-old cousin, Myra Gale Brown, which nearly destroyed his reputation in the late 1950s. The loss of Steve Allen Lewis was one of the darkest moments in Jerry Lee Lewis's family history. Sadly, Jerry would later lose his eldest son, Jerry Lee Lewis Jr., in a 1973 car accident. These two tragedies haunted him throughout his life and are often cited in biographies as major factors contributing to his bouts with depression, substance abuse, and his reputation for living a troubled and turbulent personal life. Number 3. Phoebe Allen Lewis. Born in 1963, Phoebe Allen Lewis is the daughter of Jerry Lee Lewis and his third cousin-turned-wife, Myra Gale Brown. She is one of the more visible of Jerry's children, especially in her later life. Phoebe worked closely with her father for years as his manager, handling aspects of his career and personal affairs. For a time, she was instrumental in keeping his career active, particularly during the periods when he was still touring and performing in his later years. However, their relationship later became strained. Reports surfaced of legal disputes and family conflicts. At one point, Phoebe was accused of mismanaging her father's finances, though she denied any wrongdoing and maintained she was acting in his best interests. Outside of her role role managing her father's affairs, Phoebe has generally led a private life. She married and later took the last name Lofton. She has children, but unlike some celebrity offspring, she did not pursue a high-profile career in music or entertainment. Instead, her most prominent public role has been tied to her father's legacy. In later years, Phoebe expressed that despite their past disagreements, she had reconciled emotionally with her father before his death in 2022. Today, she is seen as both a caretaker of his memory and part of the complex family history that surrounded Jerry Lee Lewis's turbulent personal life. Number 2. Jerry Lee Lewis III. Born in 1987, Jerry Lee Lewis III is the son of Jerry Lee Lewis and his seventh wife, Carrie McCarver. He was named in honor of his eldest brother. Jerry Lee Lewis III grew up during a much later stage of his father's career. By the time he was a child, Jerry Lee Lewis Sr. had already lived through the heights of rock and roll fame, scandal, and his transition into country music. His upbringing was far more private compared to the chaotic early years his older siblings experienced. He spent much of his childhood at the family ranch in Nesbit, Mississippi, and unlike his father, he did not step into the spotlight as a performer. Compared to some of his siblings, he has lived more publicly in recent years, especially after his father's passing in 2022. He has been active in preserving his father's musical legacy, sometimes appearing at events and tributes connected to Jerry Lee Lewis's career. However, his life has also included difficulties. He became involved in legal disputes concerning ownership and financial control over Jerry Lee Lewis's ranch in Mississippi, a long-running point of contention within the family. Unlike his father, Jerry Lee Lewis III did not pursue a career as a performing musician, but he has been seen as a guardian of the family name and one of the heirs responsible for protecting Jerry Lee Lewis's estate and memory. Number 1. Lorie Lee Lewis Lancaster. Lorie Lee Lewis Lancaster is the daughter of Jerry Lee Lewis and his fourth wife, Jaren Gunn Pate, though her paternity has long been disputed. For many years, Jerry Lee Lewis himself denied being her father, and she was not consistently acknowledged as one of his children in public accounts of his family. However, Lorie has always insisted that she is his biological daughter. Some reports suggest that she and Jerry reconciled later in life, with her spending time with him before his death in 2022. Unlike some of her siblings, Lorie Lee did not grow up in the spotlight or play a role in her father's career. Instead, she led a more private life under the name Lorie Lancaster. After reconciling with Lewis, she met with some of her siblings and became a part of the extended Lewis family circle. Considering the tragedies in the lives of Jerry Lee Lewis's children, their stories are almost as turbulent as the legend himself. The fact that he lost two young sons so early remains one of the most heartbreaking parts of his life, especially for fans who followed his journey closely. What are your thoughts on Jerry Lee Lewis's family story? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.